Tina, you're muted.
Gosh, well, look at that. I'm talking to you and I'm not saying a word, and Bob's letting me know. Thank you, Bob. We are celebrating Bob's birthday here on Into the Absurd. So I hope you had a chance to get a little bit of a virtual slice of that cake before the show. And to thank him for being such a very stalwart, as he was and demonstrated at the front end of this show, technical assistance here along with Erica Holscher. And we're coming to you today from some unknown beautiful cabin in the mountains where we're going to have an existential conversation with Ari Benjamin Bank. Ari is a professor at the Community College of Philadelphia, where he teaches in the English department. And we're going to talk to him about his work with students, about his work in human rights and animal rights as an activist, and his work as a first-time documentary producer and the star of his documentary on his bid for his presidential run called Highest Office. So all that on Into the Absurd today. We hope you'll put your questions in the chat box. And let's get started. Ari Benjamin Bank, welcome to Into the Absurd.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. As I'm thinking, as Bob rightly pointed out, that in all of this birthday celebration, I forgot to unmute myself, and thinking, Ari should do this entire show with me in mute and him, since your voice is so strong and loud in the community as an activist for human rights and for animal rights and all the work that you're doing. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And yeah, I want to start off by, I'm really interested in the work that you're doing with your students in the English department at Community College of Philadelphia, and how you are using curriculum to help students with empathy. What made you want to do that?
I've always been a big fan of emotional intelligence. I've always valued empathy as a very important quality in people. And I think it can always be coaxed out of people if they say they're not very empathetic. I'll say that's not true. And again, I try to bring it out. So if you're asking about my coursework, I sort of have a bit of an agenda where we'll read autobiographies that speak to atrocities and times when people were suffering. And these are written in the past, like maybe Night by Elie Wiesel. That might be one example. And then what I try to do with my students is then give them current issues that we can read articles about, go online, that really mirror in a lot of ways what happened in the past. And once my students see that these things happened, they're still happening, they hear it from a first-person point of view, they become more globally aware, or as what some people call it, global citizens. And once that clicks, for some reason, I don't know why, my students will tell me that because they see the world a little differently, they feel a little differently. And they feel a little more compassion and concern for others. And if I can sort of teach that, even though I'm in the English department, that's really my agenda. I think that's a pretty good thing to do.
Totally agreed there, Ari. And how do you, is it their anecdotal coming back to you and saying, hey, I just noticed I feel differently, or I'm feeling more deeply, or I'm feeling more connected?
Yeah.
Or so it's their stories mirroring back about their experience?
Me during office hours, they'll send me emails. We'll just talk before, after class. And the one thing they all tell me, especially when we're focusing on atrocities happening in the world right now, is they'll say, they call me Teach, by the way. So they'll say, Teach, you're pretty much like showing me all the things I don't want to know, that I don't want to learn. But then they say, but that's okay, because I should know about it. I think that's part of enhancing empathy levels too, it does require some shock sometimes. I mean, you look at the world and you hear about things that are really happening, or you investigate on your own and you really find out about things that are happening. I think a natural human reaction is to be really caught off guard. But then once you let it sink in and you mull it over, I think people realize that it's better to know, even though it's something very unpleasant, than better not to know.
Do you think, Ari, that it's when they say these are things I don't want to know, they're speaking to the fact that it's just really hard information to take in, hard to process emotionally because it's an atrocity, as you say? Do you think that's the part of not wanting to know?
Sure. I think one of the hardest things to do for people, myself included, is to choose to become involved in someone else's problems. It's easier to look away. It's easier to tune it out. And that makes sense because people want to be happy. They want to feel good. You know what I mean? And to learn about these things, it really takes an emotional toll. But then they'll realize that it does enrich their lives. It makes them more globally aware. And usually they want to take some kind of action. And then that leads to activism too. And I always think about the beauty of that.
Do you feel that your students in general have been involving themselves more in those kinds of activist situations within community college, within the city, or as run by you? Because I know you're involved in a lot of leading a lot of marches and sort of spearheading a lot of movements. Are your students becoming more involved in those in what you're spearheading?
In every class I've taught, I advise a club at this school where we do a lot of projects to assist people in the community and assist people around the world. For example, my students and I in this club called the International Student Organization, every year we run a backpack project. It's called Put a Pack on That Back. And last year we couldn't do it because of COVID and everything. But the time before, we collected about 300 new backpacks, and they were all filled with new school supplies. They were really excited because they were on like Action News or CBS and KYW. And we were able to donate all of those backpacks to students at the Spring Garden School, where they really were in need of those. And then we had collected extra backpacks. So we sent about 100 to a schoolhouse in West Nigeria, where one of our international students she's from Nigeria. She flew to Nigeria once the semester ended, met up with the shipment of backpacks, gave them out at the schoolhouse, and then sent us pictures back. So they definitely get involved. And just to continue a little bit, is that in my classes, even if they don't join a club or an organization that has that kind of humanitarian mission, I still always bring in projects or little things that people could do to help out. There's a student food pantry at the college because 1 out of every 4 students are food insecure. At where I teach, it's 1 out of every 3. So I always tell my students if they want to bring in like a little something to eat, a snack or something, bring it in, and then I'll drop it off to the food pantry. And that's the way for them to become involved. And one other thing that they always become involved with is that in a certain course I teach, I focus on forced child labor and human trafficking. And they're always shocked to know like about forced child labor and how many people are trapped in it and where it's taking place and what products they're in. And they're always taken back by chocolate. Not many people know that hundreds of thousands, not millions of children are trapped in forced child labor for companies like Nestle, Mars, Reese's, M&M's, and Hershey's. So a few years ago, we started a petition on change.org to put pressure on Hershey's to stop their use of forced child labor and to go fair trade and work with the farmers. And I think I was looking at the petition today, it had over 21,000 signatures. So yeah, I'd say like all my students somehow find a way to participate in doing some good in the world.
When did you decide that action and activism was a direction that was fulfilling to you? How early in your life?
Oh gosh.
I mean, were you young and involved?
Oh, I would bring stray dogs home I would find to my parents' house growing up. And I would say, oh, I found a dog, can we help it? And I think the first time that I really wanted to get involved in some kind of specific form of activism was when I guess I was about maybe 11 years old. And there was this thing called Trevor's Campaign, and it started with this young boy, you probably know of it, who started this project where he would actually go into the city and give people who needed food, like lunches or dinners or sandwiches that are already prepared. And once I heard of this, I went to my dad and I said, and I went to my mom and I said, I have to do this. We have to make some sandwiches. We have to wrap them up, maybe some snacks too, and take a drive in the center city and different parts of the city and just drive around and look for people who might be on the street, who might need food. And I remember my dad took me downtown when I was 11 and we did it. And it gave me a sense of fulfillment that nothing else gave me and still nothing else can really give me. Not that's kind of fulfillment. So ever since that moment, it's really been a huge part of my life just because I like to do it.
We've talked before as well about another mission that's very important to you with your students, and that is shining a light on the subject of mental health and bringing that to the forefront in a similar way. Can you talk a little bit about how in your classes or informally with your students, you try to open doors and make the conversation accessible and easier for people?
It's how I introduce myself the first day of classes. I'm an open book. Well, that was the cliche. I never lose cliches. Sorry about that. But I like to tell my students about me and important things about me or things that they might not expect I would share. And one of the things I tell them is that I do have PTSD, depression. That goes all the way back to my childhood. And I tell my students about it because I feel it's not something people should hide. I know there's a lot of discrimination against people who have mental illness or mental health concerns. We can see that in the news today, I think, with a lot of these athletes coming out too. And when I tell them the first day of class about the condition that I live with, I will have, let's say I taught like 80 students that day. I had 4 classes. I'll have at least 3 or 4 students come up to me right after class or swing by my office later that afternoon or send me an email and tell me they really appreciated that and that they might live with this condition. And then they'll say, is it okay if I come by to talk about it with you sometime? And I say, sure. And it kind of goes from there. But there's a lot of ableism right now. And it's something that I'm always trying to fight against.
Do you feel that as you get to know your students, working through the semester, that you can see the changes the changes in them because of these relationships, because of opening yourself up? Do you feel that it strengthens? I don't see how it couldn't strengthen, but I'm wondering if, over time that you've been working on this, it must be sad for you when students are graduating or when they move on. I mean, I guess the plight of every professor or teacher, and that is that, the very thing that you've helped and provided a safe space for. But I wonder if that's fulfilling to you in the same way that your activism is being able to be in a position. I know when I was growing up, I certainly never had anyone introduce themselves, or anyone who was a professor or a teacher or whatever, and be as open or honest. And I am thinking, as you're talking about how that might have, made a difference for people in the class, how that might have changed the way we think. And that's a woulda, shoulda, coulda, but I guess the question is, that must be very fulfilling for you.
It makes me feel good. I guess it's a double-edged sword, because of course anybody with a beating heart doesn't want to hear about someone they care about, or anybody who survived some kind of trauma, or they're going through some kind of trauma, or they think they have depression or an anxiety disorder. That's hard to hear. But on the other hand, and I think especially, I would say especially with the student population at the Community College of Philadelphia, a lot of students tell me anyway that they really don't have anyone who supports them, or they're afraid to tell someone in their family, or to tell one of their friends, or again, they just don't have anyone in their life to talk about this with. So if I can be that person, well, the first thing is I'm honored to I don't know why I would get it, but they give me that sense of trust. They trust me, and I do find it, fulfilling. To me, it's another form of volunteerism or activism. I'll wrap up here, but I know that a lot of people think activism is volunteering at a certain organization, or participating in a march or a protest, or making a petition, or starting a boycott of a certain company, maybe, whatever it is. And that is a form of activism in my mind. But I also think a form of activism, volunteerism, is you can volunteer your ear and just listen to somebody for a while and not give advice, just listen to them. So I think there's all sorts of ways to volunteer, to help people in the world. You just have to do what feels right for you.
As far as your writing, your poetry, and the different avenues that you have, has that been a source of an outlet for you throughout the years in managing and working through PTSD and depression?
Sure. I usually tell people now I quit writing because it became a bad habit. But I still write now and then. And one of the last things I wrote, it was for an anthology that was actually published by the Philadelphia Weekly. And it was an anthology of survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And when I saw this call in the newspaper for these personal essays to be submitted, I sort of felt compelled to share my story. And it was accepted, and it was put in the book. And it was also featured as one of the essays in the newspaper. I was allowed to give a reading, or they were asking me if I would give a reading of it at the Free Public Library of Philadelphia. And I guess, to be honest, which is the only way I know how to be. I don't know how well that helped me. If anything, it sort of stirred things up from the past, and actually fell into a depression not long thereafter. But to me, what's much more important is I remember the reading, how it affected other people. I remember this young lady who came up to me and said, "Can I give you a hug?" And she hugged me, and she told me she was a survivor too. So I'm not very good at putting myself first. So it does mean more to me, and I get that sense of fulfillment by writing or talking about having PTSD or being a survivor, because I like to see how it might give other people a feeling of comfort and trust to talk about their own stories if they want to.
Do you think the initial impulse to share the story, what do you think that was? A connection, looking for connection?
No, I wasn't looking for connection. I thought it was something I had to do, basically there.
Do you think for other people or for yourself?
For other people.
Okay.
It was hard to write. And again, after it was published and after people were reading it, and after I gave that reading and people were coming up to me and sending me emails about this, it really did stir some things up. And I didn't have the life skills at the time to know how to practice self-care, how to know when to take breaks. I really threw myself into it full throttle. So again, I always tell myself, and I believe this, is that the feedback I did get from a lot of other survivors, it made it worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
I've never done an interview like this. How am I doing so far?
You're doing great.
That's good. So are
you're very I love sitting at the table for 50 minutes every week, because we don't really know where the conversation is headed. We have a somewhat of an idea, because and we share with the audience ideas or things you're working on or what's happening for you in your life, but it's a dance, right? And I feel like your ability to be very open with your life and what's happened is a reflection of the many things that you've done throughout your life up to this point, Ari. And that is, like, I felt like I had to do it. I felt like I needed to do it. And it feels very much to me talking to you today. And I know you, and we should also say, if people don't already know, but that you are married to Kirsten Quinn, who is also, who is an actress and been on many, many stages in Philadelphia, and is at the Irish Heritage Theater. So, and we've loved having you in the audience to cheer her on. And we'll talk a little bit more about Kirsten's show that's coming up before the end of the show. But I know you as a person that is very devout in your, dedication to things. So, and that's what I feel you're showing, right? That's the experience I'm having. I also know there's a side of you that really responds to the absurd in things, and to the surreal in things, and the unimaginable in things. And I think that's so much of what I think of when I think of you. And I wonder if your documentary, Highest Office, which is a first-time venture, right, for you as a filmmaker, which chronicled your presidential bid. I want to get into that and find out, at what point did that idea come to you that I'm going to run for office?
Oh, I don't know. First off, I really had no intention of ever running for office. It sort of started when a few students of mine, I think this was before class, and they were talking politics, and I think his name's I can't remember the exact students. I'm not going to say, but one student said, if you ran for president, Teach, I vote for you. And I'm like, yeah, of course you vote for me. I'd vote for me too. And then the other students said they would. So I started just telling people, you know what, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and run for president. You know, president of what? They would say, the United States of America. Well, what else am I going to run for? And it just snowballed. People were believing it. I had some students start a social media campaign. One made a official campaign Facebook page. Another one made an official Instagram campaign page. Someone set up a Twitter account for my campaign. I had people, someone in the acting community actually sent my wife Kirsten my first like campaign logo, and it had my name, Ari 2020, and then the slogan was "Why the hell not?"
Mhm.
And I'm actually I'm wearing one of the buttons. They're really small buttons because it was a really
Yeah.
small campaign. Um, so we were passing out buttons, and then before I knew it, talking a movie with the director's name. He's a teacher at CCP2. His name's John Pappas, and we started talking about making a movie about my run for office, which wasn't really a documentary, it was a mockumentary, you know,
Mhm.
Think Office or Spinal Tap, something like that. And it seemed to be really good. It was a fascinating process. I learned so much about film and how difficult. Oh my God! Wow. Um, and anyway, here I am today. I obviously didn't have a shot in the election. A couple people wrote me in, Kirsten for one, obviously. I think my cat was the other person who probably wrote me in. No one else would. And now I have this movie, and sometimes I'll go on Twitter and go on like the vice president or the president's official Twitter account, and I'll just post my movie like Harris Bank 2024, and I'll have a little funny tagline, and people watch it and stuff. So it's just something for entertainment now.
What do you feel was the biggest well, I guess let me back up and say, was there fulfillment in that process for you, and how did that manifest? What did that feel like?
You mean the making the movie or the
Running for office, making the movie, this sort, just
yeah.
the larger picture of it starting out as, I'm guessing, sort of a joke, but then it just took on mileage.
Yeah. Well, I'll answer both of those. First, the film, if that's okay. Um, I, I knew acting was hard, and I know it's hard in the arts in general because of Kirsten and how hard she works. I mean, it blows my mind. And then, of course, she introduced me to other people in the theater community, and I realized whether you're producing or you're directing or you're a stage manager or you're one of the actors or you're working box office, whatever it is, it's a lot of work. Um, so I really found a stronger appreciation for what artists do and how important the arts are. And especially right now, how people really need to understand that the arts are just as important, if not more important than a lot of other things that we have as part of our society. So I learned that. I also learned that I'm not a very good actor. I learned that I'm a terrible person to direct, because I remember anytime I was handed a script with lines for me to say, I already had a pen. I'm like, no, I don't say that. No, I'm not going to say this. And then I would start writing into things I really wanted to say. And the director would be like, so I learned that maybe that was my first and last movie. And and on the movie, I had a lot of my students from the college work, and I just love my kids. They're the best. So I had a really good time, just being with my students and everything. As far as the campaign goes, and what I learned from that, I guess that's a little more serious. I would have, I started with a 10-point platform, and a lot of things that I would have liked to see at the top of other politicians' agendas, real politicians' agendas, weren't really there, but people were really responding to the things that I was sort of speaking to, and I kind of like that. If anything, it just sort of like helped reinforce that my ideals and my values, they have some importance to other people, and I appreciate that.
What were some of your 10 points? Your, say, top 10 points, or
I wanted to call for an end to factory farming. I don't eat meat. That's just by choice. I don't judge people if they do, but a lot of people don't know that what we would call like regular farming, I guess, has really dropped off and fallen by the wayside, and now it's just these huge factory farms where I don't want to go into it. It'll be too depressing, but where animals really suffer a lot and go through a lot of pain, just so people can have a cheeseburger. And I find that to be sort of problematic. I believe if people aren't kind or at least respectful to animals, that's a reflection of our society. I'm also an environmentalist, and one of my campaign hashtags was "It starts with the farts," because one of the biggest polluters is the methane gas that comes from cows, which is really belches, not farts, but I didn't know what would rhyme with belches, so it starts with the farts. And I would try to tell people that not only not eating meat maybe, or cutting down your consumption of meat, or just having like meatless Monday maybe, and trying to get your animal products, if you choose to eat them, from a farmer, not a factory farm, is not only good for the animals, not only good for the person's health, but if they say they're environmentalists too, it's great for the environment. But I did tweet out to Harris and Biden and other people running at the time that I think they should adopt the hashtag "It starts with the farts" and to consider my point, but no dice. They didn't get back. Yeah. I did have points on my platform, but those are really dealing with more humanitarian situations, or from a humanist philosophy. I just think some of the smaller things that we could do are really going to make a big difference. But again, I wasn't a very popular candidate. Again, only 2 people wrote me in, and we'll see what happens when it comes to politics right now, I guess.
do you feel like your foray into filmmaking, your first venture, sparked an interest in perhaps more of that? Is that an artistic outlet that intrigues you?
I loved it. I remember talking with Kirsten because she does stage acting, and she always tells me she loves it because you work really hard and then you put up the show, and then when the show's over, it's gone. And for me, that would drive me nuts. I'm like a bathroom cleaner. Like I like to clean a bathroom, and when I'm done, I'll look at that and say,
look at how good, yeah.
Oh, so I did the film approach, and I really loved it. But again, I never knew how much time and work went into this. So I've decided you never know the future, but it seems to be a one and done deal. Unless I get support for Ari 2024, it's probably the first and last time I'm going to do some kind of acting, because I'm going to leave it up to the professionals, I think.
What was the most challenging part for you as an actor? You mentioned that that you tended towards improvisation. That seemed to be where your mind was going when you were given, set lines. What other aspects of it did you find that were surprisingly challenging to you?
A lot of retakes.
Mm-hmm.
It might be like one shot. I said, that was pretty good. No, this happened or that happened, or someone spiked the camera, which by the way was always me, spiking the camera. I guess that was something else that was difficult. Go through a whole scene, and I know it was wrong to spike the camera, but when a scene would end, I might look right at the camera and go like that, and then I realized you have to do the whole take again. So that was tough for me. I think my heart also went out to the people who were doing the sound, doing the lighting, doing all that kind of work, because that's some pretty heavy equipment that they're carrying around, and it was hot filming in the summer, and they kept plugging away. So just my admiration for people, whether it's in film, for example, or on the stage, or making music, or doing photography, any kind of arts. It really increased my appreciation tenfold. I would like to just, if you heard a sneeze, that was my cat sneezing, sorry. I do want to say that one of the stranger parts of making the film that I found very uncomfortable, physically uncomfortable, was having those wires that they put down your shirt, and then there's like some kind of pack that goes on like where your waist is, and they stick it on like your underwear is and stuff. And I felt like they were turning me into one of those creatures from did you ever see The City of Lost Children by any chance? They have like these wires, or the Borg from Star Trek.
Or Betty's Summer Vacation.
Betty's Summer Vacation, perfect example. I didn't like that. Sometimes it made me feel like I was, some kind of
wired.
But I don't think
Definitely. Well, I think it's really the intricacies of artistic production, whether it be filmmaking or theater or any of that, is so eye-opening when you get on the inside of it. And it's great that you got that up, that you took that chance, that you really, got out there and got in the middle of it. I think just to understand what the craft is about, and what an immense amount of work on the part of so many people it takes to get these things to happen. Emily Schilling is saying to everyone, note to self, sign up for one of Ari Bank's classes. I know, I thought the same thing, Ari. I'd love to come in and sign up for the fall semester and just sit in the back row and be taught English and learn it in a way that would tell stories and draw me closer to the,
I wouldn't myself as a teacher, but I believe in free will. So if people want to, sure.
Do you think that the choices that you're making as a professor in any way were influenced by your own experiences that you had when you were in school? Did you ever sit back and think, oh, I would, let me just stop there. My questions just wander on and on. So sorry about that. But I think you get where I'm going, right?
I do. I really never enjoyed school as a student. And I would get quite nervous. For some reason, just sitting in a class, I'd be very nervous. If you gave me a room of 100,000 people and I'm talking, I'd be fine. So I really can't recall any, moments in school. Though I did have a couple influential teachers, but really that wasn't it for me. I think what sort of guided me to want to teach empathy, being a global citizen, fighting indifference. I hate indifference. the idea that everybody needs to be awake and see what's going on, and then maybe see how they can help if they want to. I think that came a lot from my upbringing. My parents, my mom, my dad, they instilled in me some wonderful values. I had other family members too. In particular, my grandfather, I called him Pop Lou. His name was Lou. I called him Pop, and we were very alike, not just like-minded, but like-hearted. And I learned a lot from him that really the best thing you can do in life is to help somebody, to be kind to people, to be warm with people. Don't be afraid to show you care about them and your affection you have for them. And I really think, that's where this comes from, leading up to the subjects that I like to teach today.
When you were in school and you mentioned being in class and being anxious in the class, why was that? Do you know?
I was a very nervous child. I might not have showed it so much, I guess, but I always had a lot of anxiety, and I was often very fearful, not of things or places, just having that sense of that feeling of fear, and I don't know if that goes back to something that I went through when I was young, or if it's just the way I was wired. But even today, I feel pretty scared a lot of the times, and I might not even know why. I do have a lot of anxiety, but then again, who doesn't if you live on this planet we call Earth? But I learned to live with it and handle it and everything. So no matter what situation I'm in now, when I feel very anxious, or I feel like I'm going to have a panic attack, or if there's some trigger that might set off my PTSD, I know how to practice enough self-care where I can get back to the place where I need to be. Yeah.
I hear you. Yeah. That's the big challenge, I think, in knowing more than a little bit about that. It's true. Just all of the things that you mentioned are important steps to sort of containing all of that. And I think this sort of idea of existential, what is the question? Do you experience existential dread? And it's yeah, all the time, which I don't think necessarily correlates. I don't know how it is for you, Ari. I know for me, it's not anything specific. It's just, I think that's the root of a lot of, or at least what I've come to understand for a lot of people, the root of it all is that it can be linked to something very, very specific. Driving over bridges is something I really don't enjoy doing. But I do think this idea of it's just a free floating anxiety that's there in the air, and it decides to take flight sometimes.
Yeah.
But you did mention that you would be comfortable, and you would be comfortable being, say, in front of 100,000 people. And what I really observed and noticed in the film was how confident, and I just felt, and very in character, in type, you seem to be. So I wondered, did you feel anxious in front of the camera?
No.
Yeah.
As long as I didn't have to do the lines that I was given, I was good to go. I wonder if I'm an alien sometimes, because the things that probably would scare a lot of people don't scare me, but most of the things that would never scare anybody can really give me quite a fright. So that's just the way I am, I think.
But it's interesting to and in thinking about what you said earlier about being in class and sort of feeling anxious as a child, which I can totally relate to on so many levels. And it's funny to think about how much energy gets diverted towards managing that anxiety, and then that part of your brain isn't freed up to sort of be active and be engaged and be curious. or at least that's certainly the way that it was on my end. I guess I wonder, do you, if when you sit, like when you get in front of class, you're fine though, right? You don't have a problem leading a group of students.
No, I feel quite comfortable up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. When
Yeah.
is it, and I'm sure if you're sitting in an audience now, I'm guessing you don't feel anxious, or do you feel anxious?
Well, it depends the setting. If it's an audience, maybe at a concert I go to, or the occasional baseball or ice hockey game, I feel pretty good. That being said, large crowds, depending on where my mind's at the moment, that can really bother me. But it's it's more settings, I guess, like a classroom, or as a teacher, if I have to like be in a workshop, and even just like 10 other people in the workshop, I, I can feel my body tighten up.
Mm.
I I guess those are the times where I feel a little afraid to speak, because others have other things to say, and I'm afraid what I say might not measure up to what they say. But for some reason, when I plan out my lessons for my students, and I know these are things they've reacted to very well in past classes, I I just feel very confident, and I don't mind making a fool out of myself in public anyway. I just bought this. Can you see it? It's a bullhorn.
We have the exact same one that Bob bought for a show.
And I didn't need it for anything. I lead marches and stuff, and every year I lead the march for the Human Trafficking Awareness Day. But I just bought this because it's pretty cool. I'm not going to turn it on because that won't be good. But it lights up and everything here, and I'm thinking like maybe just going on the street, walking through Center City, and giving people random compliments from a block down or something like that. Um, it's it's fun. All that being said, when I'm with Kirsten or even some of my friends, it can be quite embarrassing for them. So I feel there, but I can't stop myself.
I've a favorite moment of many in the mockumentary was Kirsten just like in one of her many hilarious nonverbal reactions to the whole unfolding in front of her was priceless. And some of the faces that we've known on stage at Irish Heritage and at IRC, Cassie, and it was really fun to.
Yeah.
So what about a TikTok? I mean, what about you just take this on the road?
What do you mean?
I don't know, your show, your improvisational sort of, tap people on the back in the grocery store and say, I'm here to give you all the space you need. We were talking about that before the show, just sort of man on the street things. I would watch that.
I thought you said Tic Tacs, and that's what confused.
Oh, TikTok.
The 1.5 calorie breakfast.
Well, that too. You never want to be without TikTok.
They're 2 calories, but they thought 1.5. Anyway, I researched that stuff, but I rather just do it in the moment. If someone ended up filming me or something doing these things, I certainly wouldn't mind. But it's nothing worth recording or anything like that. Again, the movie's something I wanted to do. Otherwise, when it happens, it happens. And then once it's done, it's like a fart in the wind. Poof.
Random acts of creation.
Yeah.
Is a pretty wonderful artistic adventure. I mean, if we can get, it doesn't have to be formal. If we can get any of those in our day, it's rewarding. It's a 15-second production, that you haven't even planned.
And it's absurdism. I mean, an absurdism, there might be something really deep lying underneath it. You know that better than anyone, with your theater and the IRC and all of the absurdist plays you do and all the productions you put up. And sure, they're funny as hell. Betty's Summer Vacation keeps coming back to my mind. That one just, I was peeing myself. But no matter what you do, whether like the arsonist, for example,
Mm.
there's there's really serious underlining meaning to it, and the absurdism or the humorous parts just on the surface, but then it's like peeling away those layers of an onion. And I know that whenever I've seen an IRC show, it's I think about it. So I was like
Mm.
laughing at first, but there's a lot to it. So I really appreciate, and I mentioned the arts, what I learned from that, but especially from your company, the IRC, I really found an appreciation for absurdism and how deep it can really delve sometimes.
Well, thank you, Ari, for for being there, for supporting it all along the way, and for working box office for us a couple of times. And I do think back on Rhinoceros, The Arsonist, the Boris Vian play that we did, The Empire Builders, where you find this family, Kirsten was in you find this family moving up successive floors in their house to try to get away from this unwavering fear and noise that they can't identify. And when you think about how it ushered in, little did any of us know back a decade ago, or that we would face the largest, not the largest, but certainly a very important existential reckoning, in 2020. And it's a little frustrating right now to not be able to get back out onto the stage for obvious and very good reason, but to be able to sort of really dig deeper into some of those stories.
Yeah.
And to see how they resonate now. So that's the sort of arm reaching, when the time is right, to be able to see what thinking about that in the way you say that it stayed with you for a long time. What does that feel like now in the midst of this world that is with us now?
The one play that comes to mind that you produced was Rhinoceros.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking off the top of my head right now, but I remember the very last line, I think, was "I will not capitulate." That was Ethan
Lipkin. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. But that idea of people conforming, I guess just to feel more comfortable and part of the masses, and how uncomfortable it can feel to, not to be a contrarian on purpose, I'm not saying that, but just to stay steadfast to your own ideals in the midst of everybody trying to tell you, think this way or think that way. And I think we see a lot of that playing out, particularly now in this culture. People who are fighting social injustices, I'll see them get slammed sometimes on social media and the backlash they can get, but they keep fighting the good fight because they won't capitulate. That's what they should do. And I see that in a lot of other avenues in our culture right now. So when you mentioned some of the plays that you feel might be reflecting what we see happening today, I think Rhinoceros is also a good one I wanted to add on to that list you had.
I remember distinctly Kirsten bringing her students from CCP to the show, and how curious and just the questions and engagement, and how it was definitely getting at something. What was that, six years ago that we did that show? It was really hitting at something back then. I mean, obviously it's a show that will have resonance, but then that will have resonance for centuries, I think. But I also found it fascinating in the 4 years preceding, in the 2016 to 2020, how it just really started coming alive in front of our eyes. So yes, I do hope and can't wait to be back out telling those stories. And I'm gonna get one more question in here, Ari. We're before we hear about Kirsten's show that she's in right now. Bob's sending me a note that there was a question from Robin. Now that you do have more life skills, as you say, What do you do for self-care or recommend for others that they do? That's a big question, and realizing it's a great question and an important one. But what are some of the things that you do now? You talked about balance and
Yeah. Um, I I went through a therapy process called dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, and I also went through exposure therapy. And part of the DBT therapy was learning life skills, um, and how to just take care of yourself, especially when you live with depression or bipolar disorder, anxiety disorder, or PTSD, whatever it is. So um, the first thing I did was start to keep a diary card, and it would have different sections to fill out. Um, and one of the things I noticed I had a hard time filling out was just eating, sleeping, and exercising. Because when I would get caught up in the world or caught up in my head, I would not exercise. I wouldn't eat. I wouldn't sleep right. And there's some basics that I need to do. I learned that it's important every day, if you can. If you can every day. If not, it's okay. Do it the next day. But just take 5 minutes out of your day to do something you enjoy. It could be eating an ice cream cone or a slice of pizza. I'm getting hungry. It could be, just putting a song on or watching a YouTube video or something like that. It could be anything. Doing a mindfulness activity. It could be, looking at some pictures, whatever it is. That's really important too. And I would say the last thing when it comes to self-care is not to beat yourself up. I find that a lot of people are really, really good at being their worst enemies. The good people in life too, the kind people, the empathetic people, they sometimes put so many people and animals ahead of themselves. They forget about their own sense of importance. So just to take that moment and to realize that, just do your best, be good to yourself. And it's important to be good to yourself and not to beat yourself up. And to end on this, everyone has bad days. I don't care how your mind's wired. Everyone's going to have some bad days. If you have a bad day, you don't want to beat yourself over that, because not to sound all fluffy and everything, but it is true that there is going to be another day. The sun's going to come up again. We keep going around this sun, and the earth is always turning. So you can tell yourself, you know what? I had a pretty bad day today. I didn't do so well. Maybe tomorrow things will be a little better. Doesn't sound like much, but I feel it goes a long way.
No, I think it's sometimes the simplest, and the things that we've heard a million times before, we hear them again and they mean something differently. And that's certainly, I think, true of tomorrow is another day, and a chance to build on what you created and to try things differently.
Yeah.
And speaking of tomorrow being another day, I want to make sure we get in some words about Kirsten's show that I believe is opening tomorrow. Can you give us the plug for it, Ari?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, she will be in a show tomorrow. It's at Malcolm X Park. It's actually 3 Sundays, so it's tomorrow and then a week from Sunday, and then the Sunday after that. And it's done by Theater in the X. And I believe if you would just go to Theater in the X's their website, you could find information. It is free. I'm going by memory. I hope it's free.
People will find out when they get there. Do you have the title?
It's called West Philly Meeting.
West Philly Meeting.
West Philly Meeting. It's going to be going for 3 Sundays. It's in Malcolm X Park. It's done by Theater in the X. And I think you get more information by going to that website. And she's also doing another play for her company, the Irish Heritage Theater, or as we know it, IHT. And I have to read the title. I have it here. It's called The Holy Ground by Dermot Bolger.
Oh, great. During Fringe, right?
That's going to be streaming from September 22nd to September 26th. And I think if people want to get more information on that, they would go to the irishheritagetheater.com.
Great. And probably in the Fringe guide as well, too. I'm sure information is in there. And that's Kirsten performing. I believe it's a one person show, one woman show. Yeah.
I think 23 pages.
Oh my. That's where she's been. She's been learning lines.
Yeah, hence my appreciation for acting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And this is yeah. Well, so everybody who's a Kirsten Quinn fan, which everybody I know is, you have two opportunities to see Kirsten, Ari's lovely wife, Theater in the X, and also Irish Heritage Theater coming up. Ari, thank you so much for everything, for sharing just the great buffet of life that is yours right now. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and we didn't even get to animal rights. We didn't even get to so many things to cover, but we'll get you on this show and we'll turn the tables and we'll have you host, and then you can throw out the softballs.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you so much for having me on your program. I really love your show. I love your company, and I want you to know that.
Well, thank you, Ari. We're kindred spirits on many levels, and I appreciate you taking the time to be on with us.
Okay, thank you. You take care, okay?
Take care.
Okay.
And thanks to everybody for joining us. I do hope you got a slice of that birthday cake, that Bob Schmidt's virtual birthday cake. And the great news is you can have dinner now and it's all good. So I hope you'll join us next Saturday, August the 21st, when Trudy Greyboys joins us on ITA. Trudy is a musical theater actress. She's a singer, and she's graced many stages here in Philadelphia and in New Jersey and been recognized for her work. We'll talk to her about being a musical theater actress, and she has a one-woman show that she's working on, which is the journey from Europe to America of her family and their legacy and heritage. And we'll talk to the creating of that one-woman show and what it feels like to carry that legacy onto stage. So that's next week. That's Trudy Greyboys joining us on Saturday, August the 21st, from the birthday boy, Bob Schmidt, from Erica Holscher, and everybody here at the IRC in this lovely place where I'm coming to you from, which I have no idea where it is, but it just looks so inviting. I hope that you're having a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week on Into the Absurd. Be safe, be well.